Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I have a couple of questions that I'm going to pose in this particular briefing, and the questions are going to be, when are we going to see another very active pattern like the one that we saw last week, where we had big snow in the plains, we had all of the very wet weather that stretched from Texas clear to the eastern Corn Belt and parts of the Northeast? And the second question, which I think we're going to start off with here, is when is this temperature pattern going to break down? So that map you've been looking at here shows you from mid-September through mid-October what the average temperature ranks are by climate district. And what it has really told us is that we've had this very persistent ridging in the jet stream that has been focused in eastern Canada, specifically between the Hudson Bay and Greenland, that has really just had a very difficult time moving. And when we look out over the next 10 days or so, we continue to see that if there is any sort of shot of colder air, that's all that we're going to get out of it. Much of the coldest air is still going to be sitting out here in the Gulf of Alaska. It will be at times targeting the west coast. But even though we will get some cooler air, including some frost events that try to come through the upper Midwest, the northern plains, for example, and then into the Northeast, the likelihood of any sort of persistent cold air will not show up in the forecast until we are able to disrupt the pattern. And this is the pattern we've been in. So this is a view from the North Pole down, and that pattern has been one where we've continued to favor deeper troughs over the last not just 2 months, but even a little bit before that. There's been a big reinforcing ridge here, and the flow has come around like that, but it's built back up into a larger ridge that's in place here. And again, we can see the full effect of that by looking at all these climate reporting districts that have like these single digits in them. That means going back 129 years, there's that many different places that are seeing the warmest such 30-day time period on record, and it is a major contrast to what we had a year ago. Now, taking a look at frost, this is a map I made starting in September 1st through October 17th, looking at all the locations where, according to the RTMA data, we've picked up a frost so far, so that would be shown in gray. And what we need to be on the lookout for is that normally by this time of year, pockets of the Northeast, Quebec, Ontario, then coming through the Corn Belt, we are already experiencing our first frost. In fact, Sunday was the climatological average first date of a frost for my hometown in Mahomet, Illinois. Where all the action is in the near term, though, is off the west coast. Deep troughs of low pressure continue to kind of reload and reform in the Gulf of Alaska, and that's going to set us up for a very active pattern across the west. It'll mostly be divided. The southern part of California, south of the Central Valley, will be drier, but very active weather to the north. What's helping this out is this larger ridge you still see sitting here that's getting that flow really cranking and coming around here. Now, when we see the first piece of this, it's already over parts of Nevada and into Utah. It's right there. And that first piece that you see coming out there is going to move and put down some snow over where we saw some snow a week ago. I'm talking about Wyoming here. So overnight tonight, tomorrow morning, we're going to watch that. By the way, if you just notice here, I'll kind of rock back and forth on this national view. I want you to watch right here, please. It's just kind of neat. You can see the clouds moving very clearly, but that white, that gray that's in this area, that's actually some of the leftover snow from last week. Much of it is melted and is now into that topsoil moisture, which is good. We know the drought situation in that area. But over the next 10 days, this is what we're looking at overall. Okay, the west coast, it's not going to quit. I'll show you that in a few moments. We have the system I just talked about right now that's going to move over to Wyoming tomorrow, cut across parts of South Dakota, north of Iowa, get into Wisconsin by Thursday. Weak front's going to come in behind that. Then you notice there's an event coming from parts of like the Ozarks going across the Ohio River Valley, which remember at the end of last week saw some severe storms in this area. Where we're going to set up this pocket next week for some wetter conditions. But outside of that, notice how much of the rest of North America is favoring drier conditions. And I want to step in and kind of talk about these differences in the models and show you the major players moving forward. So we're going to start with the European. I'm going to look at the jet stream level pattern. As I play from Monday into Tuesday, there's our first wave. Now you know this isn't going to be connected to brutally cold air because look, north of it is ridging. There's not cold air that's getting tapped into to deepen that trough. So by Tuesday midday through Wednesday into Thursday, it's basically going to go from Wyoming over to Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and eventually end up here near this part of Ontario, Michigan, and the Great Lakes. But still, no deeper trough that was connected to. Where's the deep stuff? It's still in the Gulf of Alaska. And getting into this weekend, we're going to see a couple of important things taking shape. There will be an upper air trough here sitting over some colder air. I say colder comparing it to what we've had. This ridge is blocking it from tapping into any really cold air. And to be honest, much of the northern hemisphere has not had much cold air this fall so far. It's all been tucked away in these deeper troughs here. And starting on Sunday going into Monday, that is the powerhouse of a trough that's going to go ripping into the west. And as it does, look at the ridge that reforms. So this will be a big rebound in temperatures. And yeah, we're keeping an eye on a tropical system down here as well. So the country's really going to be flanked by troughs at this point, but the one in the west is tapped into the deepest and coldest air. And I'll tell you something, as I play this out, this is the following Wednesday, Thursday time frame. We still continue to see ridging in this area, which means it may be beyond the next 7 to 8 days before we actually see some sort of breakdown in this pattern. All right, let's talk precip. Here's the first low we're watching. It's really the only game in town. Big high pressure cell sitting over, the Appalachian Mountains. That's protecting so much of the country. But this low by tonight into tomorrow morning, so this is 5 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday, getting to mid-afternoon on Tuesday, is going to be spinning here in Wyoming. So we got more snow coming into this area. As we play this out, it goes into South Dakota by Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon, it's over parts of Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota with a frontal boundary, a warm front stretching into northern Wisconsin and Michigan. And then by Wednesday night, it's going to be developing here into a better defined low sitting right here on the border. So we're going to watch out for a frontal boundary that sweeps through, bringing in a chance for rainfall through Missouri and Iowa, Illinois, and then a broader shield in the warm sector here on the northern side. So this is 7 p.m. Wednesday. Let's just play this out into the overnight hours. And that low is going to try to stay in this area for a while after that. But as I said, our attention will be kind of grabbed by the much bigger events that are taking shape over in the west. So let's go talk about them. I like to do this multi-model comparison. So the European is over here on the right and the GFS is on the left. So we've already seen, and both models here are really well timed with that low by Wednesday night getting to be here. See, there it is in the GFS, and it's in the same place with the European. As we play this forward, getting into Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening, that low tries to get over here to the eastern Great Lakes and drags its front over the Appalachian Mountains, both models in lockstep. They also have the position of the next very deep low in place here just off the west coast. So that one brings in a frontal boundary that kind of lashes the Cascades, the Klamath Mountains, the northern Sierra here. And you'll see in the models, the timing is about the same in both of these. This is now 7 a.m. Friday morning, getting into Friday afternoon and evening. That is just the first of many waves that are going to be coming through the west that are going to be bringing in quite a bit of precipitation. There are some differences. Notice the Europeans more aggressive with the precip here in Idaho and Montana, with the GFS a little bit later behind that. But as we play this forward from Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday and getting into Monday, a couple of things play out early next week. The deepest of the troughs cuts into the west Sunday night and next Monday morning, and you can see it there. At that same time period, there's going to be a stalled out frontal boundary that sits from parts of the Mid-South through the Ohio River Valley, Tennessee Valley, up to the Mid-Atlantic. And that's sitting between this high pressure cell and another one down here. So the flow's coming in like this, and it's coming out of the north like this, and therefore it just collides right along that boundary. So that's our precip right in through here. But getting into early next week, we can see that the models are really aggressive on dipping that trough into the west. And it's going to be a big snowmaker for the Sierra Nevada. It's going to be a big rainmaker for the northern or the Sacramento Valley, Klamath Mountains, and Oregon, Washington, Idaho. This is a big system that's coming through here. Now I'll tell you something. The models late next week, this is the 25th of October, are going to let these troughs of low pressure eject into the plains. But before we get there, let's do a little model comparison. So this is the European, next 7 days. So we have the first system. That one gets us there by Thursday. Then all the troughs coming in. And then early next week, the frontal boundary that sits right here, that gives us the stationary front that produces the rain and storms into this area. By the way, I failed to mention this, but we do have, as that high pressure center sinks over the southeast, we will get some return flow around it. So southern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and parts of Louisiana could see some showers in there too. What's the GFS say? Well, here's the European GFS. That's some pretty good agreement. But take a look at the differences. That boundary here is wetter in the European. That's the blue-greens. The GFS is wetter over parts of Iowa, Missouri, Western Illinois. Probably the biggest difference, though, the Pacific Northwest from Northern California. European's much wetter farther to the north. The GFS dips that trough farther to the south of San Francisco, right in through here, and gets it pretty far to the south. And that's much wetter for the central parts of the Sierra Nevada as well. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But as we get into week 2, both models attempt to do this. By day 10, they're opening that wave up, sending more action into the midsection of the country. This is still here, though. That ridge is not going away. We're just sending pieces underneath it. So what we end up getting is the West Coast stays wet, but now we go back over into more active time period. That would be the last week of October is what I'm talking about here. So what's interesting about this is that was something we wanted to ask ourselves at the beginning of this video. Are we going to see more activity in the midsection of the country from the plains to the Midwest to the Ohio River Valley? The answer is in week 2, yes. And the GFS shown here says the same thing for week 2. Temperatures. Let's look at minimum temperatures because we were talking about frost earlier. This was this morning, so let's go into tomorrow morning. This is Tuesday morning, getting into Wednesday, and then into Thursday. Now, behind that first system, remember that goes from Wyoming to the Great Lakes, we're going to bring a frost into the Dakotas, most of Nebraska, and parts of Kansas. And then on Friday, that cooler air, again, keeps moving over Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota. So we're going to get a frost in eastern Nebraska by Friday morning. At least that's the latest update here. When does that cold air get into the Northeast? Well, here's Saturday morning's low. So now we got it in Wisconsin, possibly in pockets of eastern Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. We're going to watch out for frost conditions here. And then by Sunday, it's over in the Northeast, an area that has really avoided cold air for a long time. And the GFS is most aggressive on bringing in the frosty temperatures even into Sunday morning. This black contour represents where we switch from above freezing to below. I put a hard contour on it. The European isn't quite there. It's got 30s, but not a frost. And the blend of models, it's got pockets of it, but not a real deep frost, not as deep as the GFS. So where we finish this is, let's go out there day 5 through 10. So we got the cold air lingering here. The next trough coming into the west, but in between, remember that ridge that comes in? So back up to temperatures here that are 12 to 15 degrees above average for the day 5 through 10 time period. And if you notice, the warmth that I talked about over the last 30 days seems to be persistent into the long-term forecast out day 10 through 15. And the models don't want to let this go. They're predicting that the time period of October 28th through November the 28th favors the same conditions. But there's a little difference. It's not quite as warm as it was in this area because we're going to start to let this pattern open up and move across the rest of the country. So fall-like weather will be coming to this region, and it might be, well, it will be more frequent than what we've seen. But with an opening up of that pattern, you can also expect the precipitation pattern to not give us a dry fall for most of the United States. And even what you see here in Texas stretching through the Mid-South, right in through there, don't expect that to be as dry as advertised here. Last thing I want to point out, what's reinforcing all of this is La Nina. And as I blow this up to take a close look, this is impressive. That is a strong La Nina. Southern Oscillation Index is 12 right now. We talked last week about the cold water extending to the west coast. Well, what will continue to reinforce those deeper troughs will be the sensible cooling of the lower atmosphere due to the cold ocean temperatures that are in place there. That's a reinforcer. And it's still warm here, and it is warm there as well. So that's why I think that if you look at the way the PDO is behaving, that would be the warmth here compared to the cooler water there, La Nina, and then what's going on in the North Atlantic, there is persistence in this pattern. I did not forecast that at the end of September for what October was going to look like. So we're just kind of giving you some updates here. All right, I'll stop it there. Have a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday. Thanks.